Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to talk about all the books I read in the month of July. So this video is going to be a little bit different because it's a lot for me to film an entire wrap up after work, and I only really have time on the weekends. And since it's now, and I only actually have time to film on Saturday, not on Sunday. So it's actually July 29th as I'm filming this with this outfit, but there will be other clips of me in this video, mainly talking about my stats. And at the very end of the video, I'm going to talk about, I think, the last two books I'm reading in July. So that's a little bit different, but I mean, it is what it is. I hope you guys don't mind. So basically, so far I've read 10 books, but I think I'll finish the month off with 2 extra books. Like I said, those will be at the end. Plus, I don't know what I'm rating those yet. So my stats I'll also film, I think, on Monday, I think. Oh yeah, so usually I talk about my books from least favorite to favorite. I will be doing that, except like I said, the last 2 books will be the last 2 books I read this month. So hopefully that's not too confusing. So yeah, next will be the clip of me talking about my stats. Okay, excuse my very pale face. I had a long day at work, but I'm here to give you the stats for the month. Let me just check. I read 12 books this month, or finished 12 books this month, which equates to 4,374 pages. I had 2 2-stars, 1 3-stars, 4 4-stars, and 5 5-stars. That's actually funny, I didn't realize. So 2 2-stars, 4 4-stars, 5 5-stars. I should have read 2 more books and given them 3 stars. Then I would have an even number equating to stars. All right, so I had 2 2-star books so far this month. The first one is A Million Junes by Emily Henry. This book is a young adult magical realism story about these 2 feuding families, basically a Romeo and Juliet retelling, and we follow June, whose full name is actually Jack the Fourth. Basically, in her family, every firstborn is named Jack. So she's a Jack, but her nickname is June, or her father calls her Junior, nickname June, so that's her name. And she's an O'Donnell, and the O'Donnells have been feuding with the Angert family. So of course she falls in love with an Angert boy named Saul. And basically the magical realism, the magical part of this book is that basically her house is magical. There are these little things, floaty things, that allows her and Saul to go through memories. And there's this curse on both their families. Whatever happens to an Angard also happens to an O'Donnell, and the other way around. And they're basically trying to figure out this curse and how to stop it. I read this for my Emily Henry vlog, which will be uploaded on Thursday. This I didn't really love. It was a 3-star throughout the majority of this book, and then the ending just bumped it down a star for me. I felt like the ending was way too convenient. Everything resolved way too quickly, especially since there was this whole feud between these families that have been going on for generations. Not the whole curse thing, but mostly like the reactions of her parents to like the curse finally being broken. I also didn't really believe the love story in this book. I felt it like I didn't really feel any chemistry between these characters. And I didn't really understand a whole lot, which is fine for magical realism, but I felt like I couldn't really connect to the story. I couldn't really connect to these characters. June is a very forgettable character to me, and Saul is even more forgettable to me. Plus, there was this whole plot line of her teacher who used to date Saul, which was also really weird to me and didn't go anywhere. And that teacher, it was a writing teacher, and she was talking about how June was this amazing writer, and I felt like that was only a plot point for her to get close to Saul. So like that whole storyline didn't go anywhere, and I felt it was very unnecessary. So yes, unfortunately I didn't love A Million Junes, which, to be honest, I felt like with her young adult stuff, I would have preferred this over The Love That Split the World. But so far I'm actually reading The Love That Split the World, and I'm enjoying this one way more than A Million Junes. So yeah, find out my thoughts on The Love That Split the World at the end of this video. Next, I'm really sad about Fullmetal Alchemist. I also gave this one 2 stars, and I cannot believe it. Maybe it was just me that I was a little bit in a reading slump, but this just felt to me like a serialized story. And I don't know, I just heard that this story is full of heart, and I didn't really get that so far. Maybe if I continue on. Basically, Fullmetal Alchemist about these 2 brothers, Alphonse and Elric, and they did this like alchemy spell to bring back their mom, and it went horribly wrong. Alphonse lost his body, and Elric lost limbs, and then he basically put his brother in a suit of armor, and he has like these metal limbs now. It's basically them trying to get their bodies back, plus like solving all these problems that they need alchemists for. Yeah, so like I said, the first volume just didn't do anything for me. I didn't really connect to these characters. I didn't feel like it had a lot of heart so far. I can definitely see that if I were to read a bunch of these volumes, that eventually I would start to fall in love with these characters. So far, I didn't. I own the second volume in this edition, so hopefully that one will prompt me to really love this. But so far, unfortunately, I didn't, and I'm very disappointed because I really thought I would. Okay, now I'm talking about the 4 4-star books I had this month. Most of them I actually read during my 24-hour reading vlog, which I'll leave linked for you. That reading vlog was just full of 4 stars for me. First one is Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. This is a story told in verse about this girl named Jude, who at the beginning of the story, she's living in Syria, she's just living her life, doing her thing, and then the revolution starts, and her mom basically flee to the US, where they live with her uncle and his American wife and their daughter. Basically her figuring out her place in life now that she's living in the US, finding out what she loves, what she really wants to do is act, and then she actually gets an opportunity to do so, her getting close to her cousin and making friends. It was really cute. It's a cute middle grade story. I don't think this will stick with me a whole lot, even though I did relate to this book on a couple different fronts, which if you want to know what those reasons, like why I connected to that, I talk about that a lot in that vlog. I would say I would recommend it if you really love middle grade, or if you have like somebody around you that's middle grade and you want to diversify their reading a little bit. And it's like, it was very quick to get through because it's told in verse, but I don't know. I don't think, like, this is definitely not going to be a favorite book. I don't think I will recommend this book widely. The next 4-star I read was a novella, part of the Tempting Monster series by Catherine Moon, and it's The Basilisk of Star Manor. Tempting Monster series, basically a trilogy of monster reverse harems, or like white shoes romances, but The Basilisk of Star Manor is actually an MF romance about this basilisk Basilisk is basically the same like lore as in Harry Potter, for example. If you directly look at a basilisk, you basically die. The witch in charge of the Star Manor actually sets him up with a blind girl. So he wears this, you can actually see it in the on the cover, he wears this cloth over his head, over his eyes, so that people can't look him in the eye. He's finally able to take that off. And it was really cute. I don't think it's gonna stick with me. It's not my favorite. I really love the white shoes aspects of this series. But this does further the plot a little bit. And I would say if you love this series, if you've not read this one yet, I would highly recommend it. But I don't think, like, this is not really a novella that stands on its own. It's really part of this wider world, because there is a plot line with the main villain of this trilogy. So yeah, if you've loved this series, definitely read this one. And if you've not read this series yet, start with A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor. Next, I finished a trilogy, The Seduction of Viscount Vice. This is the third and final book in the Fallen trilogy. This is a trilogy of novellas, and in this one, this is actually a second chance romance about this woman who kind of used this Viscount to get out of a horrible engagement, and then she basically left, and now years later she's back, and he is obviously hurt and doesn't understand everything that happened. She had her reasons, and it's basically them falling in love again. It was a good historical romance erotic novella. I would highly recommend this trilogy. If you love historical romances that are a little bit spicier, I would definitely recommend this trilogy. And my last 4-star read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is about a girl who's like a city girl. She loves living in the city. It's basically she is the epitome of the trope of somebody goes to a small town, falls in love with either the small town girl or the small town guy, and leaves the city behind and leaves his like stuck up girlfriend behind. She's basically that girlfriend. Like the last 3 exes of hers have basically left to go to a small town for some reason, fallen in love there with some perfect small town girl, and broke up with her. Now her sister wants to take her to a small town and basically force her to kind of also do that, falling in love with a small town guy. But she meets her, like she sees her like work nemesis there, Charlie, who she's an agent, he's a editor, and like they had some bad blood in the past. They quickly resolve it. I wouldn't say this is a hate to love romance, but basically they're both going through a lot of things, and you know, she knows that she wants to go back to the city, and this is only temporary. I did like the first half of this book I loved more than the second half. I feel like, but that is true for most Emily Henry's books now. She's more of like a women's fiction author than really a romance author. I do really love her romances, and especially in this book, I really thought they had a lot of chemistry. I really loved Charlie. I love their interactions, but at the end of the day, it's always about this heroine who has like some baggage that she has to deal with, and the guy also has something he has to deal with. So it focuses on a lot more than the romance, and since I prefer romances over women's fiction, I don't think her books will ever be my favorite, but I did enjoy it. And if you love Emily Henry, if you've not read this book for some reason, I would highly recommend it. And I really love the whole book seller, book editor, book agent part of this story. Now for my 5-star reads, I had 4. First one is a reread, and it's Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This took me way too long to read. I don't know what it is. I honestly think that Empire of Storms is just not one of my favorites in the series, even though we see the love story of Lorcan and Elide unfold, which is one of my favorites in this series. Basically, this is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series. One of my favorite series. I honestly think I prefer her Throne of Glass series over her Court of Thorns and Roses series, which is not a very popular opinion. Yeah, this just ends on the biggest cliffhanger of life. And I always hate that I have to read Tower of Dawn before I can continue on with Kingdom of Ash, but alas, that's what I need to do, because I really want to do that, because I've only read Tower of Dawn once. I've never reread that book, so I really want to. So yeah, what can I say about the Throne of Glass series that hasn't already been said? Like I said, it's one of my favorite series of all time, and if you've not read them yet, and you really love Court of Thorns and Roses, I would highly recommend that one. Next is Lore Olympus Volume 3. I am slowly making my way through this series. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling. It's very slow burn. I gave all volumes that I've read 5 stars, and I cannot wait to continue on with this series. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is a very hyped dragon fantasy romance. It's about this girl named Violet who has this condition where she has very frail bones. So she's always thought that she was going to be part of the scribe quadrant in this world. Basically, there's like, I think 4 different things you can be. The 2 most fleshed out are the scribe and the dragon quadrants. But at the last second, her mom forces her to become part of the dragon quadrant, which basically she thinks a death sentence, because you have to be very strong and it's very physically demanding. Years ago, there was a rebellion, and all the children of the rebellion, so the children of the parents who are part of the rebellion, they were also forced to go to the Dragon's Quadrant. So, and her mother played a big part in that decision, in going after the rebellion people. So she knows that she's basically their number one enemy. And one of them, the son of the leader of the rebellion, Zayden, which in my vlog, I actually did a vlog for this book. I kept calling him Xaden, which sounded weird to me, but I just kept doing it. I think it's Zayden. Anyway, moving on. She knows that he's a part of that, and she's convinced that he's gonna kill her. But anyway, she goes, she meets friends there, she falls in love with Zayden there, and I really loved it. I do see, I can see both sides of this book. I can definitely see why it's such a hyped book. I was flying through this. This was so fast paced. I know a lot of people think or say that the world building was lacking. I really didn't think so. I actually really love the world building and the lore and like the mythology in this world. I was like, I don't know, I was very impressed by it. I do see and understand why it also is getting a lot of criticisms. But overall, I do feel like it is worth the hype. If you've not read this one, I would highly recommend it. And yeah, I cannot wait to read the second book. I did a full spoiler vlog for this book. So if you've read this book and you want to know all my spoilery thoughts, I will leave that video linked as well. And the last book I'm going to talk about in this portion, like I said, there's going to be 2 other books I'm going to talk about. I don't know what I'm going to rate them yet, obviously, since one of them I haven't even read yet. I haven't even started yet. But for now, my favorite book I read this month was Heartless. This is the second book in the Chestnut Spring series by her. This was very, very, very hyped, especially last year. I could definitely see why. Or last year. It came out in 2023. Oh, wait. Yeah, I don't know. I guess the copyright is for the... So it says here that the copyright is from 2023, which I guess is the traditional published copyright. Anyway, moving on. This is, like I said, the second book in the Chestnut Spring series. We follow Kate, who's a single father, and Willa, who's basically a free spirit, and she's best friends of the heroine from the first book. And Kate is just this grump. He's like the grumpiest of the grumps, and he needs a nanny for the summer. And basically nobody's good enough for him. So he's rejected nanny after nanny after nanny until Summer, like I said, the heroine from the first book, gets sick of his shit. And she decides to stick her best friend on him and basically ask her to be his nanny. And he's very attracted to her. So he doesn't want to do it at first. But then he sees how much his son really likes her. So he accepts, even though he really doesn't want to. It's basically their love story. It was so good. I love the whole Grump Sunshine. I love the whole... I just love their love story. I loved how funny this book was as well. It had so much heart, which is ironic considering it's called Heartless. I loved his son. He was such a cutie pie. He was so sweet. And yeah, if you've not read this Small Town Cowboy series yet, I would highly recommend it. And cannot wait to continue on with this series. The third one is on my August TBR. Those were all the books I read so far, and the next clip is going to be me talking about the last 2 books I read this month and me wrapping up this video. Alright, now for the last 2 books I read this month. The Love That Split the World by Emily Henry. This one I gave 3 stars. I preferred it over her other young adult book, A Million Junes. Even though this one also had its flaws, I just kept wanting to turn the pages, wanting to find out what was going on. I felt like the mystery portion of this book was more intriguing. It dealt with like alternate universes and time traveling a little bit, which, like I said, I found interesting. There was a story about an ex-boyfriend in here that really was very annoying, and I still don't understand why that was a plot line. And there was a heavy case of incel love in this book. I do feel like Emily Henry didn't really know how to write love stories back then because they were very unbelievable to me. I didn't understand why these people loved each other. Same with A Million Junes. And I do feel like now with almost every adult book she's written, I do feel like she knows how to write love stories and believable love stories at that. With this book, I didn't know, first of all, I didn't even know these characters. They were not that well fleshed out, and I didn't understand why they loved each other. But I did enjoy my time reading it. Like with A Million Junes, there were a bunch of times where I felt like I kind of want to DNF. With this one, well, I do have to say the first 100 pages, I seriously was debating DNFing it because I didn't find it interesting. After 100 pages or so, I was really getting into it, and I really couldn't stop. So, would I recommend her young adult books? I wouldn't say so. I would say just stick to her adult works because that is obviously where she found her success, and I think rightly so. And then the last book is also an Emily Henry. In case you didn't realize, I read 4 Emily Henrys this month. I actually did an Emily Henry vlog as well. I read her first 2 books and her last 2 books. I mean, I guess you've you got my thoughts in this wrap up too. But if you want to know my in-depth thoughts, still no spoilers, I will upload that video on Thursday, and I'll leave it linked here once it's uploaded. But I read Happy Place, and let me actually check for you. Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite books I read this month. I found it heartbreakingly beautiful. Oh, actually, I didn't even tell you what the Love That Split the World is about. So we follow a girl who's at least part Native American. I don't know if she's, like, both her parents are Native American, but especially, like, I know her mom for sure, her biological mom, but she gives her up and she gets adopted by this family, by her family. And she never really, like, there's always a part of her that wants to know where she's from, stuff like that. And then she starts seeing this grandmother figure who keeps telling her stories, mostly like Native American folk tales. And her parents send her off to get psychological help, and then she stops seeing this grandmother figure for a while, and then she sees her again one last time, and grandmother warns her that she has to save him within 3 months. And that is basically how the story starts. Like I said, it deals with a little bit of time traveling, deals with alternate realities. So that is young adult. Now for Happy Place, this book came out this year, and this is my favorite Emily Henry. It deals with Win and Harriet. So they are a couple, but they are part of this group of 6 friends. Every year they go to this cottage. I don't know if it's, yeah, I think it's a cottage. Well, it's like a very fancy cottage. And this time it's the last time because one of her friends' fathers owns this cottage and he decides to sell it. So it's their last time. But what their friends don't know is that Win and Harriet split up 5 months ago. And since they don't want to ruin this last hooray, this last trip, they decide to not tell them that they broke up and pretend that they're still engaged. And so it's kind of like fake dating in a way, even though it is with your ex. So this is a second chance romance, and I absolutely loved it. So this basically, you get chapters in the present and chapters in the past, and you read about how they fell in love the first time and why they broke up. It was so sad. Like, this just like really broke my heart and then put me back together again. I thought that Emily Henry did a second chance romance so well. I really love this story. Like I said, it's definitely my favorite Emily Henry, and I would highly, highly recommend it. It is definitely one of my favorite books I read this month. And yeah, if you love Emily Henry, if you've not read this yet, I would definitely say read it. Especially if you loved People We Meet on Vacation. The reason I didn't love People We Meet on Vacation is because of the trope. I don't really love long-term friends to lovers. That's not really my favorite trope. Second chance romances, however, I really love reading about. And I thought she did it perfectly. So yeah, I would highly, highly recommend this one. So yes, those were all the books I read in the month of July. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. And I would also really love to know what your favorite book was that you read this month. For me, it's a tie between Heartless and Happy Place. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.